Welcome to the Chronicle Reports. Today, we're reconducting a rigorous socio-political autopsy of a phenomenon that has recently captivated the American digital and political landscape, the ideological positioning of Vivek Ramaswamy within the MAGA movement and his public friction with figures like Nick Fuentes. While the mainstream media often treats these interactions as mere political theater, we are here to explore the deep-seated historical and psychological roots of this behavior. We will analyze how the pick-me epidemic and internalized racism manifest as a form of proximity to whiteness that frequently translates into anti-black rhetoric. This is an educational journey into the mechanics of compulsive assimilationism. To understand the contemporary moment, we must look at the clash between Vivek Ramaswamy and Nick Fuentes. Ramaswamy, a man of Indian heritage, positioned himself as a vanguard of far-right ideology. Yet he was met with a stark, heritage-based rejection from Fuentes. Fuentes essentially argued that regardless of Ramaswamy's ideological purity, his heritage would forever prevent him from being one of us. This confrontation highlights the concrete wall of exclusion, a historical reality where minorities seeking total assimilation are ultimately rebuffed by the very ethno-nationalist structures they attempt to join. The argument here is profound. You cannot policy position your way out of a system that views your phenotype as an inherent outsider. Our analysis must now pivot to a difficult truth: the tendency for some minorities in America to turn a blind eye to racism as long as they perceive themselves to be viewed more favorably than Black Americans. This is the quintessential pick-me energy, a desperate bid for white approval that often involves clowning one as own race or culture. In the Black American experience, we have a specific vernacular for this. We refer to such individuals as raccoons or bootlickers. The psychological argument being made is that by positioning oneself against the Black community or other minority groups, the individual hopes to be granted an honorary status within the dominant white hierarchy. When we see figures like Ramaswamy navigate these spaces, we are witnessing the performance of the model minority, a myth that suggests that if one performs the white way, they are automatically superior. However, this model minority status is a trap. It robs communities of their nuances and reduces individuals to caricatures for the benefit of white supremacy. Let's explore the linguistic roots of this personality type. It is documented that individuals suffering from internalized racism often use overly complicated words as a defense mechanism to sound more intelligent. This stems from a deep-rooted insecurity, a belief that who they are, where they come from, or their natural cultural expression is not enough. By pulling out a twang or hyper-articulating in a Western-dominated style, the individual seeks to gain a bit more respect. In the context of political figures like Ramaswamy, this extra smart word, energy, is often used to mask the betrayal of their own cultural interests or the interests of other marginalized groups. To truly understand the why behind the argument, we must look at the historical and cultural roots of the colonial mentality. Sources point to places like the Philippines, where centuries of colonial rule established a world where whiteness was correlated with being better in every aspect of life, from social status to employment. This created a global standard where Eurocentric features are revered, and every soap is a whitening soap. This mirrors the history of colorism and featureism within the Black community. The argument is clear. The personality of the pick-me is not an isolated incident. It is a byproduct of a worldwide standing that places melanin at the bottom of the social ladder. When a personality like Ramaswamy enters a predominantly white space, they are navigating a hierarchy that has been under construction for centuries. Perhaps the most insidious argument explored is the creation of intra-minority hierarchies. We see this in the distinction between fancy Asians and jungle Asians or chop Asians. This is a strategic attempt to distance oneself from those perceived as lesser to gain favor with the dominant group. However, the reality remains that those whom they are trying to impress view all minority groups with the same dismissive lens in the end. Intragroup racism is a distraction. It serves only to maintain the status quo by keeping marginalized groups in competition for the crumbs of white approval. We must also address the material gain associated with this behavior. Many comedians and political personalities build platforms off racialized humor and exaggerated accents, essentially betraying their own for brand deals and big stages. This happens frequently in the Black community as well, where creators use watermelon and fried chicken tropes to appease a broader audience. This is corny and lame behavior that normalizes racism and makes it more accepted for the dominant group. When political figures engage in this, they are essentially acting as political comedians, using their identity as a crutch for temporary power while reinforcing the very stereotypes that harm their communities. The final argument of the Chronicle reports is this: equality feels like oppression to those who are used to being the standard. We see people reacting with anger toward representation, whether in politics or media, because they fear losing their position as the default. The path forward is not to kiss up or tap dance for approval. The path forward is to elevate one's own culture. Not being proud of your culture is a denial of your parents, your family, and your history. You are already enough as you are. You do not need extra smart words or the disparagement of Black Americans to validate your existence. Consider a majestic tree. If that tree spends all its energy trying to shed its deep, dark roots because it wants to look like the ornamental shrubs around it, it will eventually lose its stability. It may look like a shrub for a season, but when the first storm hits, it will fall because it has no foundation. Your roots are not your burden, they are your anchor. This has been a presentation of the Chronicle reports. We hope this factual and historical analysis has provided clarity on the complex dynamics of modern political identity. Cross-reference your information, honor your heritage, and remain vigilant. Don't forget to subscribe, and join the conversation in the comments. This is the Chronicle.